Welcome to the Health Detective Podcast with Roberto Parker. Join strength and conditioning expert Roberto Parker as he shares his over 35 years of experience in training athletes and helping people achieve their fitness goals. Now here's your moderator, Chris Whiting, with Coach Roberto.
Hey, everybody, welcome once again. If it's Monday night and you're not watching The Bachelor, you are watching the Health Detective Podcast. We are happy to have you here tonight. As always, it's my pleasure to be alongside virtually Roberto Parker. Welcome, Roberto.
I'm here.
Check out the guns.
I'm here.
Tonight's going to be really interesting because we talk a lot on this show about health related topics. Obviously, sometimes what we talk about might fall outside of what you would consider mainstream advice on things. And I don't know if we're going to go down that road tonight, but I do know we're talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is red meat. And a lot of times over the last in recent history, I feel like red meat gets a little maligned in mainstream media, in mainstream medicine. And something we've seen a lot of are headlines that tend to causally link red meat to cancer. And so if I'm understanding correctly tonight, Roberto, we're going to jump into that and discuss, is there a link? What is the link? And is it true or is it false that red meat causes cancer? Am I right about where we're headed here?
I want to preface what I'm going to talk about tonight. Don't take my word for anything. Do your own research like anything else. The one thing that this COVID-19 coronavirus has taught me, and hopefully all of us, do your own research related to your health, your fitness, symptoms, disease. Do your own research. Now, having said that, research is a very iffy thing sometimes. For every topic that you say works, I can find some research that'll counter it and say that it doesn't work. Because studies can be manipulated in a way to show partiality towards a certain group of people, towards certain political groups, towards certain marketing groups. Research numbers, studies numbers can be manipulated. So the best type of study, I'm going to get a little bit technical here, is a double-blind, randomized study.
Now you're going to have to explain that for me to be able to understand what that is.
Okay, here's what a double-blind study is. If I'm going to conduct a study on you eating Cheerios, okay? Now, all right, you might say that. The person who is doing the experimenting, who's going to hand out the Cheerios, should not know that they're Cheerios. The people who are in the study, the subjects of it, should not know that they're Cheerios. So it's a double-blind study. Whereas if the experimenter knows what he or she is giving to the subjects, they can induce any sort of opinion or any sort of body language that'll indicate or invoke some sort of bias or prejudice, and vice versa. The people receiving the dosage or whatever they're supposed to receive should not know what's there. Thus, the term double-blind study.
So I never knew that. So that gets rid of bias on either side then.
Absolutely.
Or minimizes it.
My question is this, and I've done a little bit of research in the last few weeks on cancer as it relates to red meat, particularly red meat. And I go to a website called PubMed, which is a very good source. PubMed.
Like PUBMED? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
PubMed.
They're published medical studies and research that have been conducted. Now, let's go down this path. There's causation, what causes it, and then there's association.
Okay.
Now, we can say that, are there more drownings in the summertime than the wintertime in pools?
I would gather yes, as that would be my guess.
Okay, so there is a high association between summertime and drowning in pools.
Aha.
You see where I'm going with this? Now, does summer itself cause drownings in pools?
I would say that's not a direct causal link. No.
Bingo. Let's cut it to the granular level. What is the cause of drownings? The lack of ability to swim.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Summertime doesn't have a damn thing to do with you drowning in a pool. And for those people out there that have had loved ones drown, I'm sorry, with all due respect. But summertime has nothing to do with a person drowning in a pool. There's an association there, but is there causation there?
Oh, God, that's a great way to explain that, Roberto. I'm actually tracking with what you're saying here, and I'm not a smart man.
Okay, now other things we have to take a look at are variables. Okay, variables mean there's different ways to apply the dosage or the protocols. For example, if we really want to find out if red meat causes cancer, let's do this. Let's put a person on red meat carnivore diet only for several years.
Whoa.
And test them every 3 months, test their lab work, test their blood markers such as C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, white blood cells. Let's test it and see, are those things being adversely affected for the next, 5, 10 years. But they got to see on a carnivore only, just red meat only. Okay, now, here's another variable. Let's test red meat, lack of exercise for 5 years. Here's another variable. Let's test red meat, lack of exercise, plus occasional or moderate cigarette smoking for the next 5 to 10 years. Here's another variable. Let's test all the above, plus eating more carbohydrates, i.e. processed carbohydrates.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, now, so here's what I'm saying. The studies that have been conducted, were they double-blind, randomized studies in which the subjects were just consuming meat only, minus lack of exercise, minus excess carbs, junk food, minus lack of exercise, even minus lack of quality sleep. Okay, now, if you can show me a study, a long-term longitudinal study where a person was just eating red meat exclusively and they were active, they weren't smoking, they were getting enough sleep, they were eating a lot of junk food, okay, then I'll go with that. Now here's one more. When these studies are conducted statistically, I'm going to go back to my college days here.
Oh, wow.
Working on my master's. You have to have a 1.5 statistical correlation or higher.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, it's got to be 2. I don't either, really, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay.
It's like let's say to the first or second power. Let's just put it like that. So if I'm going to do a study, according to the researchers, from what I've read the last few weeks, and according to people I listen to who are medical doctors, when they do these studies, it has to be a 2 or higher in terms of statistical weighted whatever. Now, let's go back years back to smoking cigarettes only. Do smoking cigarettes cause cancer? Well, everybody knows the answer is probably yes, right? Okay, but when they did the studies on cigarette smoking, the correlation was about 2,000 or 3,000% or higher, meaning that there is a statistical correlation that's high enough that we can presume that there's a high correlation and cigarette smoking will cause cancer. With red meat, that number is about 1.5 or less.
So if I'm tracking, let me just ask her to make sure I'm following. So like with cigarette smoking, when you're looking at, do cigarettes cause cancer? You're looking at how many people that don't smoke get cancer compared to smokers that get cancer.
Well, here's the thing. Oh, okay. I'm going to back up to I did a master's study to get my master's degree at Oklahoma State on leg press. Does it improve vertical jump?
Oh,
Like the leg press machine.
yeah.
Okay. What I had to do, I had to set up the protocol so where I had a group of people who did leg press machine only. They couldn't do squats. They couldn't do any other sort of exercise but leg press.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I just set up a control group that did absolutely nothing.
Right.
That's called a control group. Now, at the end of an 8-week study, and I'm going to go back to my master's here, I believe what it showed was that the group who did leg press had a slight increase in vertical jump. The control group remained the same. And my argument is, show me a study. Anybody out there listening, show me a significant data, research, double-blind, randomized study that will show that red meat directly causes prostate, breast cancer, colorectal cancer.
So if I'm following, what you're saying is what you've been able to find is maybe there's some associations, but you've not been able to find a study that shows a direct causal link.
No.
Gotcha.
None, zero, zip, nada.
Wow.
Now, I will say this, just professionally speaking, if you're going to eat meat, eat good, organic, grass-fed, cage-free, whatever type of meat. Basically organic type of meat. Don't eat a lot of processed crap because chemically our bodies don't like that in the first place. Our DNA doesn't like that.
And just real quick, when you say processed, we're talking hot dogs, pepperoni, salami, that type of stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Anything that has been processed and touched by human beings on a high volume level, you should avoid.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Including eating meat on a biscuit, Chris.
Dang it. That was my birthday. Just for some context. I had a delicious Nashville hot chicken on a biscuit for my birthday. It was lovely. I'm back to my healthy ways today. Well, for the most part. Yeah.
Okay. But I want to throw in a few more things. I watched a podcast the other day by Dr. Ken Berry. And now he is a surgeon. And I'm just going to give a few words of what he said here. Okay. In order for a study to really be significant, the bare minimum should be about an 18 to 24 month type of study. Now, a lot of the studies that they've done with cancer and correlating with red meat have been done on mice. Okay. Yeah. Now you can control how mice lives in a lab. You can control what they eat, how much they sleep, how much activity they have. Can you do that with a human being for 18 to 24 months?
You probably can't. That's going to be a lot harder.
Exactly.
People are living their own lives. Yeah.
Exactly. Very, very, very hard to do. Now, the only group of people that could probably come close to that would be people in the penitentiary. Okay, because you can control what they eat and what they do on a certain level. Yeah. Okay, but I challenge anybody to show me a long-term, I'm going to say at least a 5-year study that shows a person eating exclusively red meat. I'm not talking chicken. I'm not talking fish. I'm not talking pork. I'm talking just beef, red meat, where they develop cancer.
And you've not been able to find one.
Not been able to find one. Now, if anybody's listening out there, message in that study and I'll look it over.
Okay. Well, that's a challenge. That's a throwdown. How can they get that info to you?
They can message it in right now if they're listening.
Okay.
I mean, Paul's at the controls there. Message it in right now. But I'm just telling you. And here's another thing that can cause a lot of issues. If you have steak for dinner every night, but you're having a twice baked potato,
Oh, yum.
You have an apple pie for dessert.
Oh, yes.
And then you have a nightcap before you go to bed.
Mm.
And that person develops cancer in 5 years. They're going to say, well, the steak caused it. Did it?
Because we've got other variables in there.
Absolutely, Chris.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going with this?
I do. I do. Yes.
So I hope that people out there can listen to this and just don't take my word for it, guys. Do your own research.
Mm-hmm.
Apply this to anything and everything you hear about disease out there, including what Dr. Fauci says,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
including what the president says, including what your governor says regarding the coronavirus, regarding anything that's blown up on the media that I think is way overblown.
Uh-huh.
We just take their word for it. We watch some guy on TV on CNN or Fox or MSNBC. Well, we have found that red meat can cause cancer. Okay, prove it. Does it? Show me the data, Dr. Fauci. Does wearing a mask really prevent the coronavirus? I've not seen any data on that.
Oh, wow. Now we're stepping into a whole nother pool here.
I know. I'm going down a rabbit hole a little bit. I'm opening up a can of worms, but I don't care. Show me the data that specifically proves that wearing a mask, a double-blind, randomized study, that wearing a mask will prevent coronavirus.
I don't have one on me. I don't know. There may be one out there. I don't know. I don't have it.
If anybody out there can prove it to me, I will listen. I will read the study.
Let me ask you this, going back to the red meat, because I was doing a little Googling. I knew this was going to be our topic.
Yep.
Do you think, or have you found research that alludes to how you prepare the meat, perhaps leading to either being healthier or not as healthy? And I'm not talking about processed, but
yeah, I know. Good question. Now, there's some people out there who will say that cooking food, or specifically meat, on an open flame can cause cancer also because it's carcinogenic.
mm-hmm.
Okay. I did not find one on that specifically. I really wasn't looking for it, but there are some practitioners that I've listened to that says that premise is not totally true. And there's some that say that it could possibly be a correlation association, but still not direct causation.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, does overcooking your meat, is that good for you? No, it's not, because when you overcook meat, when you overcook anything for that matter, you kill a lot of the nutrients.
Okay.
You destroy, you pretty much destroy it is what you're doing. So eating it raw is at best. You could probably eat something like raw beef as long as it's clean. I don't know if I do it with chicken. I don't know if I do it with pork, because, you know, I remember when I was coming up as a kid, I was always told that you should thoroughly cook your pork because you can get trichinosis, which is worms. Now, I don't know if that's totally true or not anymore, but I do know that I don't think I'd be eating raw chicken. I'll just say that.
Well, yeah, I've heard, and again, who knows? I don't know if it's double blind, but there's a lot of folks that get salmonella when the chicken's undercooked.
Yep, that's possible too. And,
yeah,
you know, there's some people. I know my mother coming up when I was a kid. We got to restaurants. If they undercooked anything on her beef, she would send it back to the kitchen, cook it. If she saw anything red in that meat, she would send it back. She did not want to see any blood at all.
Oh, wow. See, to me, that's where all the flavor is.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Well, you know, we talked about this before, that really the healthiest part of an animal in terms of long-term health are the organ meat parts.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Now, I know that turns a lot of people off, but this is a whole different topic. If you want to get every micronutrient, meaning the minerals and vitamins, plus every macronutrient, which is protein, fats, carbs, not really carbs and meat, but just protein and fats primarily, eat the animal from nose to tail.
Holy cow. Well, so okay. So I take it, you're not convinced. You've not been able to find anything to tell you that red meat causes cancer.
No.
What are the benefits, in your opinion, of eating red meat then?
Oh my gosh. Protein, fat, B vitamins. I mean, if you're just talking muscle meats here, we're talking muscle meats like steak and
Yeah.
prime rib and brisket, which are the muscle meats. Now, if you're talking the organ meats, you're talking a lot of vitamins and minerals, and even still some fats and proteins. So those are the benefits. So let's go back in history to the ancient people. When this world was existing 50,000 years ago, human beings were in a thing called the Ice Age.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were some fairly mild seasons during the Ice Age in which you could probably eat stuff like berries. But for the most part, the Ice Age, there wasn't a lot of produce around. Okay, so what do human beings eat mainly? Meat. Now, can we say they eat raw meat? I don't really know, because even back in those days, certain primitive people would kill the animal, start an open flame, and cook it. So I don't know if they were really just eating raw meat. They probably did to some degree, but a lot of it, believe it or not, was cooked meat. Now, if human beings had not done that, we wouldn't be around today. We would not be existing today because they would have starved to death. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those people lived good lives. Now, the reason life expectancy for them was probably somewhat low was not because of the food they were eating, it was because of the environment. It was very dangerous. It was extreme cold. There was predators.
Yeah.
There was sometimes starvation, where they would go from region to region, walking or whatever, and they'd go for days without eating because they, like a wild animal, they couldn't find any food.
Yeah.
Or they get eaten up by a wild saber-tooth tiger or something, or a bear would eat them. So, it was very, very hard living in those days.
Well, you have said to me a couple of times, like, what are the Inuits, the Eskimo people? What are they? They can't grow vegetables. And I remember as a kid watching this film, Nanook of the North, a million years ago. But they showed the people, and they would kill seals and walruses, and they would use every part
Absolutely
of the seal or the walrus. And I remember learning in history class about how the Native Americans used every part of the buffalo, like you said, from nose to tail. So I guess, and you hear you've got to be balanced. You've got to have vegetables. You've got to have your proteins. But I know there is a large group growing larger all the time, that are big into the carnivore diet, to say you don't have to have the vegetables.
right.
But I know you've told me you like the idea of the carnivore diet, but maybe not for years at a time, but for.
Yeah, it's well, the carnivore, I think if you really stuck with it in the right way, would be good to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in our industrialized society, the way we live culturally, would be extremely difficult to do. And I'm not saying it's not a good way of eating and living,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it is. But there are some people that can tolerate carbs a little bit better, like fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
And if you listen to some practitioners now, they'll tell you we should not be eating any plant food at all, because plants have their own built-in self-protective mechanism in which we were not really designed to consume plants. In fact,
any plants.
Any plant, because you know that cyanide comes from a plant. What else? What's the other one? Cyanide, arsenic. Cyanide and arsenic are derived from plants.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So there are certain plants that are poisonous,
mm-hmm.
and there's certain plant type of foods, because of their cellulose fibrous covering, they're trying to really protect themselves, and they're not really good for digestion. In fact, there's this guy named Sean Baker. I think I post some of the stuff on my Facebook page sometimes. He used to be a medical doctor, but he talks about how vegans have a lot of bloating and gas, and they're always farting too much. Okay.
Ah,
Whereas if you eat a more of a carnivore type of eating plan, you have a lot less gas, a lot less bloating, and you don't fart as much.
I'm
So
gonna have
that
to
might
get
be
my.
that might be good for you, Chris, to get on that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say maybe I can get my wife to subscribe to that. That'd be awesome.
That's right.
Wow, that's interesting. Because yeah, the mainstream push I feel like has been more towards veganism and
Oh,
vegetarianism.
absolutely. Because
Um,
it's cool and it's popular right now. And
mhm.
also, there are other reasons too, like because of climate change and that kind of thing. I mean, carbon footprint. I mean, they're saying that you shouldn't eat cows because cows pass gas too much and destroy the environment and all this other stuff. But they don't realize that cows that emit gas on their backside accounts for only about 5% of the carbon footprint.
Oh, seriously? Yeah, because I've heard that a lot lately. The
Yeah,
methane that they
yeah,
release. Um,
5%. Now,
wow.
the produce that you buy in the store,
Yeah.
whether it's canned, frozen, or fresh, most of that comes from different parts of the country and or part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And how do they get that here? Truck, plane, or train?
Yeah.
That's where your carbon footprint is right there. So most of your produce really is shipped in from out of town.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas you
Wow.
can buy meat locally from any farmer.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
you
Right.
go over to Belton or Grain Valley or Odessa or maybe in parts of Kansas City. I don't know. You can find a guy who raises his own cows and pigs and sheep and everything else. You can buy a side of beef or lamb or pig or whatever the case might be locally.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So
Um,
that's going to reduce your carbon footprint right there.
I'm curious too if there are any folks like you started with this is your opinion based on research that you've done, but if
Right.
folks are interested in starting to learn, do you have some places they might turn to do a little research to kick off
Well,
their own look?
PubMed is one. I'm gonna just tell you though, it's a little bit technical
Okay.
because it's more for the person who really likes to read hardcore research.
I like some hardcore stuff.
Yeah, well, that's a good place to start.
Okay.
Okay, now before I go there, I want to read this another thing that Dr. Sean Baker talked about.
Okay.
Okay, actually, it was Dr. Ken Berry. He says, "Here's what most doctors do." Okay, most doctors, yeah, they'll look at double-blind studies, they'll look at other types of studies, but many of them would just rely on their expert opinion.
Mm-hmm.
When doctors are giving a patient advice, they will rely on expert opinion, what they know and what they've heard from other docs,
Interesting.
instead of just looking at the hardcore data and really breaking down whether it was a double-blind, randomized type of study. So when I read this in the last few weeks, it's opened up my eyes, because sometimes, you'll read somewhere in the newspaper that, well, research says that red meat causes cancer. Well, automatically, if it's in the New York Times or the Washington Post, you're probably going to agree with it. But if you really dig down deep, look at how they set up those studies, the protocols within those studies. Because my argument is that sometimes the protocols weren't exactly what they should be, because you can contaminate the study if the protocols are not set up right, thus skewing the results.
Oh, wow. And that was Dr. Ken Berry, RFD, that said that?
No, not that, Ken Berry.
Oh. Okay. Gotcha.
Dr. Sean Baker is another one.
Okay.
Okay.
And Barry
So you can
Sean
go
Baker.
there. Dr. Sean Baker. I'll give you one more. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon.
Gabrielle Lyon.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's also a medical doctor. Now, she specializes a lot in protein.
Mm-hmm.
She is not a hardcore carnivore, but she's very big on consuming animal flesh. The only type of animal, or excuse me, plant type of food that she consumes are things like avocados and berries.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
it. That's it. So
Wow.
she's almost carnivore, but not quite carnivore.
Yeah. So do you ever go full on carnivore?
I do sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't do 100% of the time. No, I'll be honest with you. I do not. Because I do like eating my fruit sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, I don't eat as many vegetables as I used to. I'll say that.
As a result of this research you've done?
As well, I've been doing it for the past few months, really. But yes, I'm kind of experimenting on myself, and I have noticed a few differences.
Like what?
Well, not to get too graphic, my bowel movements are much different than they used to be.
Oh, wow. Fun.
And I have more energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it actually has helped my strength and my workouts too, to be honest with you.
Wow. Well, it would kind of make sense because you're getting a lot of protein eating that
Yes.
way.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
But the bottom line is this: I go back to my old premise, Chris. You got to be active.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to exercise, not too much. Get plenty of sunshine as much as you can. We're getting to that time of the year where the weather's getting nicer. Drink good, clean water. Get plenty of quality sleep. Try to manage your stress. Those are the most important things to do right there.
Yeah.
I don't care whether you're doing carnivore, vegan, paleo, South Beach, or whatever the case. If you don't do those 5 areas we always talk about, you're just wasting your time.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. And you said something earlier that struck me. You said some people can tolerate carbs a little bit better than others. So
yes,
it doesn't sound like you are prescribing carnivore for everyone.
Well, here's what they found, and your wife did it with me. She did the metabolic evaluation.
Yeah.
Here's my theory. Okay, this is just a theory. Okay.
Okay.
And I've studied just a little bit of how people evolved. Pretty much, our human race evolved from the center of the earth around the equator.
Okay.
Africa, South America.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as time evolved through the years, people went north, people went south, people went east, and people went west.
Okay.
Okay. So as people evolved going to the north, over the pressures of time and the period of time, certain types of foods were more prevalent and available.
Gotcha.
So as you go further north, getting back to the Eskimos, what's up there? Mainly animals. Yes. There's no produce. So they had no choice. Now, you take another tribe of people living around the South American or African equatorial portion of the world, where the weather is probably 70 degrees or warmer on a 12-month basis, there's going to be more of what growing?
Yeah. Right.
Plant life.
Yeah. More plants. Okay? Right.
So I did read this, that people who come from that part of the world, the more equatorial portion of the world, can handle and tolerate more plant-based eating.
Interesting.
Whereas even with European people from the Northern European area versus the Southern European area, because Southern Europe is closer to the equator, whereas Northern Europe is closer to the North Pole. So even disseminating those two cultures or countries, their diet and what they can tolerate and what their body has evolved to tolerate are different.
Wow. Fascinating.
Okay? Now, can every human being on earth eat meat and survive? Yes. Can we all eat a certain amount of plants and survive? Yes. But I always go back to this. It's the quality of what you're consuming. if you're going to eat carbohydrates primarily, make it the best quality carbs you can.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
same applies to meat. Make it the best quality meat that you can, because that will make a difference in your long-term health and fighting off diseases and other type of metabolic disorders.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And that goes back to that metabolic panel that Jane did with you, where you kind of help people like look at, as an individual, what am I going to tolerate the best? What's going to make the most difference for me as a
Right.
person? And you can help people come up with an eating plan that will work for them, right?
Now, yes, I can, but keep in mind now, the metabolic evaluation is not a blood test. It is more a comprehensive questionnaire that asks about certain things in your lifestyle. Now, there's a book that came out years ago called Eat Right for Your Blood Type.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now there's some truth to that. There are certain type of blood types even that can tolerate more animal-based, more plant-based, or a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
More carbohydrates, more proteins, more fats. But blood type is not the only factor. What is your neurological parasympathetic sympathetic type? Meaning, are you fight and flight dominant, or are you rest and digest dominant? Because if you're rest and digest dominant, which is related to your nervous system, how much adrenaline your body is making, if you're more rest and digest, you can tolerate more fat and proteins.
Uh-huh.
Whereas if you're more fight and flight dominant, you cannot tolerate as much fat and protein.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
Wow.
So there's some differences there, yes, but there's always that little bit that overlaps as well. Now, how much it overlaps, sometimes that's going to be trial and error.
Sure.
You can't really just tell by filling out a questionnaire. Okay.
Right.
Or even for that matter, even taking a blood test. You've got to trial and error. It might take you months, it might take you years to find out what truly is the best plan for you. Is it mainly plant? Is it mainly animal? Is it all plant? Which I don't really agree with, to be honest with you. Or is it all animal? Is it mainly proteins? Is it mainly fats and some carbs? So there's a lot of different mixes and matches that I can talk about here, but you got to find out what's going to work for you. That's why I do not believe in just setting up a cookie cutter. You got to do keto, or you got to do paleo, or you just got to do carnivore. Even though I do like parts of the carnivore, I will admit that I do. Okay. I'm not even opposed to doing some vegetarianism sometimes. Now, vegetarianism is not quite as extreme as veganism, because even vegetarians can consume stuff like cheese, eggs, yogurt, and that kind of thing. So I'm not opposed to even doing some vegetarianism.
Okay.
But,
fascinating.
But should you remain that way the rest of your life? I say, like working out, you should cycle on and cycle off. Do a carnivore for a little bit, cycle off, then maybe do a vegetarianism for a little bit. Cycle off, do paleo for a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how long you stay in each one of those clocks or those toggles, I don't know. It depends on the person. You spend 4 weeks on carnivore, 4 weeks on paleo, 4 weeks on vegetarianism, or do you do 8 weeks on carnivore, 4 weeks on the other, 4 weeks on the other? You follow me? So how much time you spend each one of those categories will differ from person to person.
And that's where, if somebody's working with you, you can do a deeper dive into them and help them experiment, help them look at their results that they're getting, and then determine what makes the most sense as far as what type of diet, when to cycle on, when to cycle off, and then also what type of exercise to complement that with, if that's
absolutely. And one other thing I'll add is, when I set these programs up, here's what most people do not like doing. They don't like journaling. because if you're going to really get specific and dial in what's going to work for you, you've got to keep a journal of what you're eating and how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like doing that.
I'll admit, I don't really care for that, but I know it's very valuable.
Because, well, how else can you really find out if it's working or not?
Right.
So it kind of goes back to what we talked about with the studies, the longitudinal double-blind studies. Because if you're not documenting what you're doing, you don't know whether it was just meat or whether it was a piece of bread or a piece of fruit or a vegetable that made you feel bad, that made you feel good, that made you feel kind of in the middle. You really don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. You just kind of throwing darts at a dartboard blindly. So you got to document, you got to journal, and you got to find out specifically what types of food combinations are giving you the best bang for your buck.
Well, I'll say this, Roberto. You're not a man that hides his passion much, so don't take it this way, but your passion really came through on tonight's podcast.
Thank you.
And I think the advice that you gave up front of do your own research, people
absolutely
really heed that, because I think we all get into our own echo chambers or bubbles of the type of media that we look like. And we tend to end up like those doctors where we just, well, an expert said it on whatever I listen to, so that must be right. And I think that is great advice. And I will say, you know, as someone who is a client of yours, I thoroughly enjoy working with you. Like journaling, there are things that you have me do that I don't particularly like, but the benefit outweighs going through the thing that I don't like. So like if somebody is really serious about making changes to their diet, to the way they exercise, if they're serious about getting uncomfortable to move forward and they want to work with you, how can they get in touch with you?
816-405-7703 is my phone number. rwpsports@yahoo.com is my email. I'm also on Facebook as we're listening right now. I'm doing a Facebook Live on my page. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. Just look up Roberto Parker.
Awesome. Yeah. And I will say, if you're not sure that you want to work with Roberto, check out his Facebook page. He posts a lot of articles and things that are really informative, and that will give you even a bit more of a flavor of what Roberto's into. But I highly recommend getting a coach. Roberto's excellent, who can help you with nutrition, with diet, with exercise. It's changed my life, and I urge other people to do it. Wait a minute. Where'd you get that shirt?
Oh, Roberto?
Yes.
I had these made years ago.
Roberto, ready, so ready. So if you're ready, so ready to work with Roberto,
that's right.
Give him a call. Email him, direct message him on Facebook or LinkedIn. If you want to work with Roberto, you can get in touch with him, and it's well worth your time. That's for sure. Any parting thoughts tonight, Roberto?
Eat right, sleep right, train right, live right, do right.
All right. You heard it. The man, the myth, the legend. He said it himself. Thank you so much, Roberto. And we'll catch you next time on the Health Detective Podcast.
Take care. God bless, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you, Paul.
Thanks for listening to the Health Detective Podcast with Roberto Parker. You can contact Roberto at 816-405-7703 or by email at rwpsports@yahoo.com with any comment or question you may have. Join us next time for the Health Detective Podcast with Roberto Parker. The Health Detective Podcast with Roberto Parker has been a KCTK production, produced by Roberto Parker, Chris Whiting, and Paul Lavoda. All rights reserved. For more information and content, email us at kctkradio@gmail.com.